Hello and welcome back to the Movie Pope podcast. And today we are going to be taking a look that has become a smash hit on Netflix and has become a bit of a global phenomenon. I am, of course, talking about K-pop Demon Hunters. And Lee, this is a movie that you have been eagerly waiting to review for quite a while. So we decided to wait until season 5 to go ahead and plunge into it, but here we are. But before we dive in, remember to like, comment, subscribe. We always love to hear from you guys, so let us know down in the comments how we're doing, and if there are any movies or TV shows you want us to take a look at in depth, feel free to let us know. We're always checking it out. Also, be sure to leave us a like. It helps quite tremendously. And consider subscribing so you never miss an episode drop. We are always putting out new episodes every day of the week. Well, almost every day of the week. So if we can get some more love and support, that lets us know we're going in the right direction and gives us a little bit more motivation to, speed up the pace. But without any further ado, Lee, so K-pop Demon Hunters, for me, was a bit of a surprise because at first I thought this was something that was fan made. It sounded very much like something that that would be like made up. But I actually watched it and I was like, oh, it actually is called K-pop Demon Hunters. It's not a goof or a fan made trailer or anything like that. This is like an actual legit production made by Netflix. And it comes to us all the way from the magical land that is not Japan, unfortunately for Lee, but South Korea. So Lee, what was it about this movie? So Lee, what was it about this movie that made you decide, we should definitely, give it a go and do a review of this movie?
Well, in your introduction, you really kind of hit the nail on the head, right? This has become a global phenomenon. It is number one most watched movie on Netflix of all time. So
of all time, like,
yes,
okay.
I believe it beat out. I want to say the number one was before it was Red, and then this one has beat that quite a bit now, right? And they got so popular, right, that they actually took it from Netflix and they started to put it out into movie theaters, right? How many times can you think of where a movie started off on a streaming platform and then actually went to the movie theaters?
Yeah, usually it's the other way around, isn't it? Because
of course.
Because you remember a time when they would make a movie and it would go directly, well, at that time, go directly to video, as they say. Like it never even had the opportunity to make even a one night run in theaters. So for it to go from streaming to to theaters, it kind of makes you sit up and think, wait, what exactly is going on here? Because usually it's the other way around. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost always right the other way around. I cannot think of a single example of a movie starting off on streaming, and then because it got so popular, they're like, hey, we could actually probably make some money of this in the movie theaters, right? Which they did do. So I think when you say global phenomenon, I think it truly is that, right? It's definitely hit this pinnacle of popularity that I would say is not normally seen. And that's what got me kind of intrigued into watching it, because I'm like, gosh, well, if this is the number one movie out there, you got to watch it, right? Like there's something that's just about it, regardless of the subject matter or who the audience is for. Clearly something is working right, and I feel like it was worthwhile to check out.
Well, another thing that I wanted to bring up as well, since we're talking about K-pop Demon Hunters, is the fact that there's been a tremendous fascination with K-pop, and I'm also going to include J-pop and other other pop scenes from East Asia into this conversation. But for me as an Asian person, when I see
people, did you just pull the Asian card?
Well, I can use it because I actually am one. I'm full blooded, right? As opposed to you, Mr. I happen to be Greek. Oh, but I'm also Polish. Oh, but I also might be Ashkenazi Jew, kind of thing. I don't
know about that last part, but yes, I see what you're going for.
But for me, like it's always been a bit of a curiosity as to why people have always gravitated towards K-pop and K-dramas and all that stuff. And you being a huge Japanophile and imbibing manga and anime like it was a free for all buffet. I have to ask, what exactly is the appeal of K-pop and pop culture from
Well,
South Korea and Japan?
I could not answer that, right? I will say I am not like, so you mentioned, right? I watch anime, read manga. That is definitely part of what it is.
He's got
I
a,
am,
he's got a shelf full of the stuff, by the way, people. I've seen it.
oh yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely, right. Yeah, I have no problem. Right? I got 1, 2, 3, 4. I got a 5 shelf bookshelf, and both of them are full of stuff. So I can absolutely admit that.
And
So,
he also
um,
goes to a lot, and he also goes to a lot of conventions that are
yeah,
dedicated slowly to anime.
yeah, that's very true, right? These are all facts. So, but yeah, as far as the intrigue with K-pop and J-pop and all that stuff, I'm actually not sure, right? That's not something I've ever really gotten into.
Hmm.
But I will say from watching the film, I I guess I get it a little bit, right? I mean, I just think that with how everything works, right? I mean, these songs were super catchy. And I don't want to get too much into it before we get in the review, but I mean, like, a ton of these were just like total earworms for me. And I kind of, before the review, I kind of started to play some of the songs again. I'm like, oh my gosh, these songs are great. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I think it's like anything, right? Like, we have bands here in the US that, everyone's all about. They want to follow, everyone gets really big with it. So I don't think there's anything uniquely different with that. I think, when we deal with like K-pop and J-pop and other pops that are out there, soda pops, that nice little inside joke for the movie. But, when you kind of dealing with all that stuff, I think it's just, everyone has that thing that interests them. And, I would say that we kind of got to, I guess, glean a little bit into that part of Korean culture, right? Just to get a better understanding of how big these groups are, these idol groups are. And I think that kind of, added an interesting flair to this. Is it's an opportunity to learn more about some different cultures out there that don't maybe get as much limelight as other things out there, at least in the U.S., right? I don't want to speak for the world. I don't know
Yeah.
how much that is, but at
Well,
least in the U.S., we don't see a lot of that.
I was gonna say because you and I grew up in a time where boy bands were pretty much all the rage back
Yes.
then, but
Mhm.
but even then, like what we see with K-pop and J-pop, like the fan base is far more. Um, I mean, they're far more diehard than people were for NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys or the Spice Girls, back in the
And that's
90s.
scary to think about, by the
Yeah,
way. That's scary to think
yeah, like
about.
I mean, you think Swifties are pretty hardcore. Like, if you like ever meet or if you ever see these J-pop or K-pop fans, I mean, it's Swifties times 10, really. When it comes to just how devoted they are to these pop stars. Um, I mean, have you ever listened to K-pop or J-pop or anything like
Mm,
that?
no, nope. I have not until obviously I watched this. And then that's where some of that, I would say, at least somewhat interest peaked in that just because of the songs and everything. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've never, like I said, going into this, I was like, this would be kind of weird and jarring for me. And I'm sure a lot of people out there that are like, K-pop, right? It's something that, I know because of its popularity, but something I might not have ever experienced or listened to. And then when this movie came up, it's like, well, I'll give it a go, right? Its popularity is immense, so it's hard to ignore it. And, I think it created a really fun environment where it's able to kind of tell a story and gives us a different look at, a side of the world that we don't see. So I think you have to kind of appreciate something that wants to tell a story. And hopefully, and like I said, I'm not from South Korea, don't know anything about it. But hopefully it's kind of hitting some marks or it's doing justice to kind of getting a small glimpse into Korean culture.
I mean, you say you don't know anything about Korean culture, and yet every fall and winter we frequent the Korean hot pot place. So
Okay. I mean, yeah, the food, sure, yeah, like we get the food, but um, uh, this obviously goes quite a bit deeper
so
than
why don't you
just.
go ahead and take us into K-pop Demon Hunters?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we got our 3-person K-pop band, right? Group. They're called Huntrix, And we got Rumi, who's the leader, and then you got Mira, and you got Zoe. And it kind of starts off in kind of this goofy fashion, right? So they're on a plane going to this final concert at the end of their tour that they're doing. Except, well, the staff on the plane are not human, right? They're actually demons. Uh, and I kind of like some of the psych acts that they do, right? Because you see like the demons are there and they look human, right? So you're kind of like, okay, like this doesn't seem outside the norm. But then, as one of the characters points out, it's like, hey, that demon, it's watering a plant with coffee, and you kind of are like, huh, you know what? That's these demons. Do they not like know anything about the human world? Because it seems like they should. But maybe they're kind of confused about everything. So I thought that was kind of weird, but.
Mhm.
But you see them, and this is kind of where we see them be demon hunters, right? It starts off right off the bat where they're attacking these demons on an airplane, and the airplane gets destroyed in the kind of the fighting, and they just kind of jump off the plane and they land on stage on perfect timing. So we're not going to question that. But Luka, I want to ask this of you, right? So we know that I have familiarity with anime and manga, right? And there's, I would say tropes that you see almost right away. That is, I would say, very much in the style of anime, right? You kind of see the characters with all these like, kind of goofy faces and designs. I think it's Rumi that takes like, a sushi roll and like, shoves it down her throat, which I've seen, being memed a lot at this stage. The girls have kind of the, these crying faces where you see all the water kind of dripping down. So there's kind of this like aesthetic that comes from like, I would say very much inspired by anime and everything like that. So I wanted to see for you, how did you feel kind of seeing some of that stuff? Because I don't really know how much anime, I know you've seen some, but I don't know really how much anime you've watched. So I guess tell me a little bit about how you kind of, I guess, were getting used to seeing some of these tropes pop up.
I mean, it actually makes sense because because anime is, it, I would say it's like the universal cartoon language, or I should say the universal cartoon that everybody knows from that part of the world, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
even though it's Japanese, I mean, I mean, whenever you see it, like it's recognizable, even if it's like a Korean, South Korean production, like this one, where you, they kind of lean into it just because everybody is familiar with it, but also, but also obviously Korea and Japan, they're not too far from one another, so obviously they're going to be influenced by by the way that they do cartoons and animation. I will say that, like, as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself, this animation looks really, really familiar. And as I dug a little bit deeper, I because I remember we did a review of Into the Spider-Verse. I just remembered, that's why it's so familiar, because it's the same animation studio that did the Spider-Verse movies.
Mm.
So that was a bit interesting right there, because usually when you watch anime, it's typically going to be two-dimensional drawing, like what you'd see in Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo or Full Metal Alchemist, right? But here it's a bit more fluid, more 3D, right? It's definitely going, embracing like the modern, I would say Western style of animation that's become so prevalent, like what you would see with Pixar or DreamWorks or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yet it still retains the familiar aesthetics of what we know from East Asian, anime, to kind of create like a fusion, as it were. Like,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah, it's Asian in substance and style, but but the techniques in the animation are very much Western. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely. So,
Well, I was gonna mention too, because the backstory is very reminiscent of Buffy the Vampire Slayer too, where
I
it's
know.
like every generation, it's like
Yep.
they're like three girls who get raised up to continue with their task of beating back the demons and maintaining the Hanmoon. And as I'm watching, I'm like, huh, Okay, so they're definitely they're definitely going for the Buffy angle right there. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not going to argue
would have
with
been
that, but
interesting. Yeah, would have been interesting if Buffy was singing all the time. That would have definitely had a very different outlook on how we look at Buffy the Vampire
well,
Slayer.
well, I will say this. There was an episode where Buffy lost her voice, and by the end of the episode, she regained it and she started screaming. So it's not exactly singing, but I guess it's kind of sort of similar because she ends up killing all the demons, but just by screaming. So
Well, that's pretty nifty. So, but yeah, so we do kind of get this backstory of everything. So demons, they like souls, and you know, they kind of utilize these souls, I guess, to power up the head demon Guima, right? So Guima kind of resists in the demon world, and the Han Moon, as you pointed out, it's kind of a barrier that keeps the human world and the demon world separate. So the girls, right, the Huntrix group, their purpose is to kind of keep that barrier together. And we get an opportunity to kind of see the demon world a little bit, right? And they're trying to figure out, like, hey, you know, we're kind of in jeopardy here. Soon they're going to be able to, you know, do the Golden Han Moon, which is this like kind of which is kind of the ultimate Han Moon. In essence, they're going to totally separate the two worlds, so the demons will never be able to get in, right? So the demons obviously not a huge fan of this, so they're thinking to themselves, well, how do we beat them, right? And then we meet the character Genu, who suggests, hey, I know how we could beat this, I'm just gonna say, like, girl band, right? This female K-pop group. Why don't we just create our own K-pop group, right? And now we have these two competing things. And I have to admit, right, when I was watching this, I was like, huh, that was not the direction I thought they were going to go with, right? But that's what they did. How did you like the idea of that you're almost getting the battle of the bands kind of say between these two groups, like kind of vying for, people's attention?
I mean, I'm just thinking. So nobody has in 1,000 years has come up with that idea. Like, it just took this guy now. It's
Yeah,
kind of. I mean,
that's true.
if you think about it, it's kind of obvious, but it's just it just kind of makes you wonder just how thick everybody is.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. And yeah, I mean, the singing, right, I think is something we have to talk about, right? Because,
I
you
mean,
know,
the singing is on point. Like, I
yes,
will give
yeah,
them props for that.
absolutely. Yeah, because, you know, they decide, hey, we're going to make this boy band, right? And we're just going to go ahead and put that out there. And you know, Huntrix in the human world, right? They're wanting to release the song Golden, right? And I think this song Golden, I don't know I don't know what's the most popular hit right now, right? But man, when I heard Golden for the first time, I'm like, this is really getting me engaged in the story, right? Because we talk about musicals a little bit, right? We don't do a lot of musicals on this channel, right? And I would say it's because there's not too many out there. I think back to Joker 2, Folly You Do, which was musical in nature, but did not work out well in the slightest, right? This to me really shows how good music could be intertwined with the story in a way to make it engaging for the audience, right? Because, you know, as they're singing the song Golden, right, you know, there's a whole lot of, I would say, kind of, you get a little bit of the inner workings of all these characters. And obviously, the one that really sticks out is the character Rumi, because Rumi, she is half demon. And that's something that we see in the kind of the singing portion of her, right? She talks about, you know, hiding, and she feels like she can't be her true self because she's part demon. She's got these marks on her, and she feels like she's an outcast with the group that she's with. And it's just so well told, where she's sitting there kind of revealing all of her demon marks and talking about how she's hiding, and how, you know, this song is, you know, going to bring apart the Golden Hamoon, and she's going to feel like she's going to be able to become her complete version by going through this. I have to just give them a whole lot of credit for how well they do these songs and how well the visuals match with the storytelling, So we get this kind of insight into all these characters, and it's done in such a meaningful way. So Luka, tell me about, I guess, your thought about the musical performances that are in this film.
I mean, to your point with Joker Folie à Deux, there was nothing original. It was just a bunch of, copyright-free music that made no sense, at all. Like, I mean, they might as well have been singing Camptown Races, because it didn't add anything to the story. Whereas here, it's well thought out, it's integral to the story, and they make it, clear from the very beginning that music is important because that's how you build and maintain the barrier to keep the demon world out of the human world. And I would also say too that that as far as musicals go, like they actually take their time to actually write some really good hits. Like I can imagine this being number one on Spotify, or if MTV was still doing it, being the number one music video on MTV. Like these are songs that you can realistically imagine being played on the radio. Really, like they're not.
Easily.
Yeah, they're not writing these songs as throwaway bits. Like these are actually carefully conceived, crafted, and recorded in such a way that they are legit. It would be like taking it'd be like taking a song by Taylor Swift and incorporating it into the story, right? And having the character sing it to kind of emphasize the point that they want to tell, not only between the characters but also to the audience as well, right? But I just think it's phenomenal, just the way that the songs are sung. The production on it is magnificent. And I will say, like, I love the fact that Rumi feels like an outcast, even though she is the leader of the group, right?
Yeah.
If she was just like someone on the side, like a dancer or something like that, yeah, that would make sense. But for someone to be front and center, who is leading Huntrix, and yet having this inferiority complex and having an imposter syndrome, I think is just perfect, because someone who you think has got it all together is actually feeling the most doubt about herself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because you mentioned that doubt, right? And I think this is a perfect segue, right? Because we have these rehearsals that they're doing, right? They're rehearsing for Golden, and Rumi, I guess the demon marks, I guess they spread or something. I don't think it was super clear exactly with some of that, but it seemed like maybe the demon mark was becoming or impacting her more. And it kind of, I guess, extended, and it was starting to impact her ability to sing. And this is where we get an opportunity to meet this kind of mother figure, right? Not only for the group, but really for Rumi specifically, right? So she kind of, Celine is a previous hunter, right? So she's a part of, I guess, the previous group. We don't really learn anything about what, I guess, happened with the other group or why she's by herself now. But she is, kind of there. And the interesting thing for me is she's a character that has very little screen time, but she has a huge impact on the characters and how they feel and how they, I guess, the mindset that they have, right? Because Celine has kind of, I guess, ingrained in them this idea that, hey, Rumi, you have to always cover up. You can't go out into the world without, wearing clothes that cover your marks, because if people find out that you got this, they're going to ostracize you, right? And they've ingrained, she's ingrained with, the whole group as a whole, saying, hey, you know what? You always have to put on a brave face, right? You can never show weakness. You always have to be strong, even if you don't feel that way. And it was very interesting because she doesn't have a lot of screen time. She probably has like less than 2 minutes on the screen, but you can feel her impact on all the characters. And she seems to have this very kind of I guess, outdated idea of what strength is, right? I think as we've kind of progressed, right, we've kind of started to see that, people going out and, looking at psychiatry a different way, right? People out there, they want to talk to other people. I think we've kind of moved into this idea that mental health is important and we want to be able to deal with it appropriately. Whereas Celine, she kind of has this like more outdated viewpoint of like, you know, you always got to put on a strong face and deal with it. And you can see that because of her actions, she's actually, in her mind, she's strengthening the group, but in reality, she's weakening it. So
well, that is kind of like the traditional way of
yes.
of Asian families, just because it's always this idea of, well, never let the world see your weakness. You know, you got to put on a bold face, and I mean that's pretty much the. I mean, it's kind of universal with all families from that part of the world. I mean, my mother was the same way too. She always used to say, don't let anybody see you cry. Just man up and just get on with it. It's kind of I kind of remember a time when I fell off my bike, and usually if a kid falls off their bike, the mom runs over and kisses their wound and says, everything will be okay, honey. My mother just came out and she said, well, you fell off your bike, just get back on and keep riding. And she just went back into the house. So it's like, so for a Western audience, Celine might be a bit of an odd person, but for someone like me, that's very typical. She's the mother figure, and that's how mothers behave. They just told you, well, don't let the world know who you are. The world sees you for one thing. Keep that up, because that's how the world accepts you. And then whatever you do in your private life, that's on you, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's really insightful, right? And I think that's, we talked a lot about at the very beginning, right? The culture that we're not familiar with, and I think be able to see that on screen.
Well, when you say we, I mean it's more of you, like, as opposed to
sure. I'm sorry.
know?
I'm talking about we as like the general American audience. I apologize. I didn't mean to include you directly with that. So
don't let me in with you, man.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I apologize. So.
Ow! Oh, for shit's sake already.
I'll get you back on that bike, Luka. Don't worry. So. But
I don't know, man. You're 32 years too late on that one, man.
No, it's okay. We'll figure it out. So, but yeah, so Rumi's starting to lose her voice. So the group's like, hey, we obviously got to fix this. Singing's kind of an important thing in our lives. And as they're going out to kind of get this fixed, they bunch into the Saja boys. Okay. So the Saja boys, if you remember from the very beginning, this is the all-male demon group that is being created. So Huntrix, is able to kind of figure out like, hey, those are the bad guys, and they kind of follow them around, and eventually they follow them into this bathhouse where they, kind of end up fighting all these other demons that are in there. Rumi and Genu, right? Genu being the head of the Saja boys, they kind of get into this one-on-one altercation, and during the fight, Rumi ends up having, I guess, like a part of her outfit kind of gets ripped, revealing the demon marks, and this obviously catches Genu by surprise, because he was not expecting that to be the case. And it kind of an interesting thing that happens here. We see the other two girls, Mira and Zoe, kind of struggling in a fight, and they need to have Rumi to help them. And Genu actually kind of does this nice thing where he ends up covering the mark, because he can tell that she's very obviously has kept this from her friends all this time. So he ends up helping cover up. And they're able to kind of win the fight, right? And we see Huntrix. They decide like, hey, now that the fight's over, we know how we're gonna get back at them. We're gonna do this diss track, where we're going to, kind of bash the demons. And the song was called "Takedown." Was the name of the song. But what I found this to be a very clever way of, I think, getting your point into the movie, right? Because we know demons are evil, right? Or we're told that demons are evil. But when the Saja boys show up, right, they don't really do anything evil, right? Like, they're not out there. We don't see them, eating people's souls. We don't see them doing anything. They're just kind of there. And we see how the girls react to them, and it's kind of like almost like chaotic how they react to them. Like they, gave people presents. And then you see you see Huntrix going and they're like destroying the gifts, and he's trying to like help someone out, and then like they have like this weird altercation. So it's almost like they are like, because they hate demons, like they just hate them wholeheartedly, like it's a part of their being, which I mean, I guess makes sense to a certain stage. But I did find it very interesting that they just are so aggressive to these demons, even though they haven't shown any ounce of, I guess, like actually doing any weird demon things. So, what did you think about that? Kind of seeing how they have this really negative reaction to them, and it just like almost gets like they're almost like bloodthirsty to kill more demons, even if they don't really understand why they're doing all this.
It kind of reminds me of who is that character from Devil May Cry? Because we watched it a few months ago. She was like the leader of the demon hunting group, and she was just so hell bent on just killing like demons no matter what.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Yeah, that's who they reminded me of. And on the one hand, I kind of think it's funny how, how like how these three who are supposed to be the protectors of humanity, they're just so bloodthirsty, and they're just eager to like bring out their weapons and just start slicing and dicing. But to a point you made earlier, like even though like Saja boys aren't actually doing anything evil, they're still facilitating for the demon world to kind of enter. To enter into the human realm from where that they can devour souls. So they're not, and if you think about it, that's kind of a clever move, because obviously if they're going around like doing all these horrible things, people are going to catch on pretty quickly, and then they're going to lose their support, and then the whole plan collapses like a house of cards, right? But it's one of those things where they don't want to, that if they are evil, they're evil in a pretty subtle way, and they're not really working for themselves. They're working for a greater power, right? And in this case, is it's the giant talking mouth Guima, right? Because Guima, at the end of the day, he's the one who's pulling all the strings.
Yeah.
And the main goal is for them to enter the human realm so they can devour souls and envelop the world in complete utter darkness. So in that respect, I can sort of understand where Huntrix is coming from, because they're not like the Saja boys aren't evil per se, but they're pawns in the greater evil. Right. So defeat the pawns, you thwart the efforts of the greater evil, who's definitely got some pretty nasty things planned for humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought up a good point, right? And just to specify, right, when I was kind of thinking about that, I was thinking more of the initial reaction, because we don't see them really doing that. But you're 100% right. Obviously, as the story progresses, it's very apparent that they're helping pull the strings. So thank you for bringing that up, because obviously at the end of it all, they absolutely are a significant force that is out there. We see them like killing, or I don't want to use the term killing, because they don't really say specifically what happens when your soul gets sucked out. I noticed like there's like you see like a newscast where they're like a whole bunch of people are missing. So are they dead, or like I don't know. They don't really get into that, but obviously they're facilitating a lot of kind of heinous things in the human world. So we have so after this altercation, we see these kind of these two characters, right? You got this kind of like three-eyed raven type of thing, or crow or whatever, with a little top hat, and then you have this really goofy grinning cat thing.
It's like a Cheshire cat, but
yes, that's
bigger.
exactly. I had thought in my head like it's kind of like the Cheshire cat, and like I said, I do really like the designs. I think they're super cool, and it does have kind of this eerie look about it, right? Because like the cat just kind of sits there, and it's always got its eyes bug-eyed open, and everything. So they kind of have this very supernatural feel to them. But these two animals, right? They end up meeting with Rumi, and they provide her with this invitation to go meet Genu, right? And this is where we kind of see these two characters play off of each other in a very significant way, right? It absolutely helps drive the story as far as what their motivations are. So we see Genu, kind of talks a little bit about his, tragic backstory, his, kind of unfortunate upbringing that he was struggling through. And as the pair kind of continue to meet, they start to kind of discuss more of their secrets and their struggles with each other. Rumi kind of ends up coming up with this plan. She's like, hey, you know what? I want to kind of save these demons because really, it's really Guimau that's the problem, right? Guimau's kind of controlling them. He treats them, terribly. She wants to kind of help separate everything. So she kind of comes up with this plan that, hey, this Idol award show is coming up, right? It's going to be the biggest thing out there. It's going to be what kind of, I guess, determines the fate of humanity, right? Is this Idol award show. And she kind of convinces Genu, like, hey, have the Saja boys lose. And, if they lose, we'll be able to create the Golden Hamoon and we'll kind of separate it. And then you'll be on the human world and you'll be able to kind of exist out here. And I just really, really liked the story between these two. They are, to me, like this kind of perfect star-crossed lovers, right? We've seen that trope quite a bit, but
they're not dating. They make that point very clear to the old lady. That's
true, right? But we all kind of get what they mean by that wink, wink. But they do kind of embody these like really star-crossed lovers, right? Where you have Genu, who is a demon, but he doesn't want that to define him, right? He has this tragic past that he kind of discloses more about. But really, he's trying to save his soul, right? He wants to get his humanity back. Whereas for Rumi, she's sitting there and she's struggling with this whole idea of her being half demon, and she feels like she doesn't want to be have this demon part of her. She looks at demons in these really negative light, but she starts to kind of sympathize more with the demons when she understands more about what they're going through. So I think the characters kind of really gel extremely well with each other. So I wanted to see, how well do you think they handled this kind of relationship between these two people that never should find love?
Well, I'm just a little bit confused. Like, so throughout the movie, like, she's very eager and very determined to try to save him, but I kind of get the feeling it's kind of a one-sided thing. Like she is going through all the motions to try to find a way to help him out, and he's kind of ambivalent to the whole process. That was my takeaway. It's like, well,
really,
it's like, yeah, that's great. You want to save me, okay? That's cool, I guess.
That's interesting, because I would argue, right? Because I think you kind of see a few inklings that he is struggling with what he's doing, and how he ultimately. I think the big thing for me is he wants to be saved, but he feel like he can't because of Guimau. I think that's the way I took it, right? I think he wants to have his humanity back. He regrets his past decisions. We even see when they're doing the kind of shared signing, right? Remember when Soulja Boy and Huntrix were together doing a signing, and a fan gave him this thing saying, "You have a beautiful soul," to Genu. And you can kind of tell his reaction to seeing that. And I think he's, very conflicted by that. So I think for me, the way I always looked at it is, it's not necessarily that Genu was kind of indifferent to it. I feel like he felt as if
I'm
do.
Fuck.
Sorry, what was that?
Hear me at all?
Yeah, I hear you.
I don't know what the fuck is going on here. We may have to stop the broadcast if this continues, man. Because because I was saying earlier, I was saying I think he's more ambivalent about to what Rumi is doing, really, more than wanting to get his humanity back, because he definitely wants, because he definitely does want to be human again, or he at least wants to purge himself of that evil. It's just I feel like he's ambivalent to the way that Rumi is proposing it to him.
I see what you're saying. Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, and I would agree with that, right? Because I don't.
Lee, I'm gonna shut off my mic. So just keep talking while I fix the audio on my end. So,
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would agree with you on a point with that, because I don't think he has full faith that the plan's going to work, right? And I think for, I would say for Rumi, she actually has more interest in the plans, because really that's always been her goal, right? She's always wanted to create the Golden Hamoon. She wants to, kind of get rid of her demon mark. So I think that she does have more interest in her plan than maybe Genu had. So that's actually a really good call out that I wasn't thinking about. But you're right. As I think back to it, really this is her strategy, but really this is all for her benefit, right? I do think she wants to help Genu out. I don't think that she's trying to sit there and pull a quick one over him. But I think that her strategy is ultimately for her benefit, and it's just kind of a side product if Genu ends up getting supported or goes through with it. So I think that is a very fair point. So did you have anything else you want to add? Sorry, just want to. All right, so I would say that we have at this stage they come up with this plan, so now it's time for the plan to kind of hit fruition. So we are fast forwarded to the Idol Awards, right? So we have kind of the two groups going to go up, and they're going to see who's the most popular one, because that's been an ongoing thing throughout the film. Who's the most popular, and trying to get the most audience for it. So we have Huntrix, right? They sing their song Golden, right? That's kind of the one that they've been, I would say, kind of going back and forth on. They initially wanted to do Takedown, but they end up singing Golden because they feel like it's, kind of better situated for them. But during the song, we see that Mira and Zoe, they end up getting separated from the group, right? We see some demons of kind of taken different forms in order to separate the group. So as the group gets separated, some demons come on stage disguised as Mira and Zoe. They come on stage and they start singing Takedown, right? And Takedown is kind of the song that is, I would say, kind of creates this very kind of dark hatred that the group has towards demons, right? Which I'm not saying is unfounded, but their song is, I would say, very metal, so to say, right? It's definitely got a lot of things where they talk about destroying and killing them and everything like that. And during the song, Rumi, she ends up having her attire gets kind of ripped off. And you can see that she has the demon marks fully exposed. And obviously, for Mira and Zoe, this comes as, kind of obviously a very scary event that they're not, thinking about that, oh no, Rumi's actually a demon. So obviously the group kind of has this confrontation. They have a falling out. Rumi goes to confront Genu. And this say Genu is kind of admits that everything was a setup, right? He lied about what he was wanting to do. And we kind of see that really, I would say that Guimau was probably the biggest factor in this, because we see that Guimau was ultimately the one that, kind of was always in his ear that, no matter what, you'll always be a demon, right? So you kind of get the vibe that, maybe this wasn't all just his plan, but, he kind of admits everything he goes through. And we also learn more about his backstory, right? Where we find out that he was actually got these, abilities And he did it initially. He kind of did it as like, hey, I wanted to help out my family, but ultimately he did it for his own self-interest, right? He got to enjoy kind of all the lavish things that he got from becoming a demon, whereas his family, they got nothing, and they continued to kind of starve and not have a good life. And I think this kind of really shows how Genu has, really kept this guilt in him all this time, right? This is something that he's been struggling with for hundreds of years, right? Because I think it's been 400 years since he's been a demon. So he's been struggling with this for hundreds of years. And, I think he's almost convinced himself that this is really who I am. But for, I would say Rumi kind of sees a little bit of that light in him, something that maybe he's not able to kind of come to terms with. So I want to see Luka for you. What about the reveal of Genu kind of stuck out to you?
I mean, I wasn't really surprised by any of this stuff. It's because Guima kind of gets into his head and just manipulates him like he always does. And and when you have that that strong of a hold over someone for that long of a period, it's kind of hard to break that grip. Not to mention too, like I said earlier, I feel like Genu really wasn't sold on the plan that Rumi was selling him. Really, I mean, because he figured, well, if there is a way to do it, I must have tried as many times as possible. But I'm always going to, as Guima said, I'm always going to be a demon, and there's nothing that anybody can do about it. It's kind of beautiful in a dark, twisted way, because it's like, Rumi sees the good in him and tries to save him, but Genu just doesn't want to be saved. It's kind of like in Star Wars, where Luke Skywalker's and the Return of the Jedi, he's like, I want to turn you back to the good side, and Darth Vader basically says, there's no saving me. I am what I am.
That's a very good. That's a Star Wars reference I was not expecting to hear.
But but obviously in both cases, the greater evil, Palpatine and Guima, they both get defeated in the end. And both Genu and Vader, they end up, committing the ultimate sacrifice, because that is their way of showing, showing the world and the protagonist that, yeah, it turns out you're right. Like, I actually can do some sort of good, and just by doing one single act of goodness is a sign that, yeah, there's still a little bit of humanity left in them.
Yeah.
I just kind of the only thing that kind of annoyed me was the fact that Rumi was just over emphatic to the in her attempt to try to save Genu, to the point where it kind of feels like she's neglecting the group. And they even call her out on that too. They even say, hey, where's your head at? Like, you've been spending all of your time with Genu trying to do this, and this. You're backstabbing us. And their suspicions are justified, because it kind of feels like her head's not in the game. Like, because the other two, they're definitely in on it. But Rumi, they, as the leader, they feel like, well, hey, if you can sort of get out of your headspace for just a little bit, we would appreciate it if you can kind of, lead us, because you are the leader of the group, so do what you do best.
Yes. No, absolutely. I agree with that totally. So, because now, once, everything's kind of revealed about the plan falling through, this kind of causes Huntrix to split up, because obviously, hey, my leader's a demon. That pretty much does not gel with my life experience so far. So we see Rumi meets Celine, right? And she just kind of is like, hey, here's my sword. I want you to kill me. And Celine kind of has this reaction that, hey, no, everything's okay. We'll admit that this was all like a fake. And I like how, Rumi kind of finally has that breaking moment, right? She's like, I'm tired of hiding who I am, right? Because she's been told that her whole life, right? Celine, her, kind of mother figure, has been always telling her, cover up and do this and do that. And I think for Rumi, she just kind of at the moment where she's like, hey, you know what, if this is the purpose, or if this is how the Han Moon is supposed to happen, then this is not the Hanmoon I want. And I found that to be, kind of a very powerful thing, right? Because she's kind of breaking out of that. And we kind of see, like, for Mira and Zoe, right? They've been kind of disillusioned now with the Saja Boys kind of being more control, right? So we see that, for their characters, they have their own insecurities, right? There's own things that they're worried about. So we kind of see, kind of everyone's in this kind of moment of peril where we see they go to this tower, and I forget the name of the tower. I'm sure it's probably like a really big tower in South Korea. So I'm sorry for anyone that's watching this in South Korea. I apologize. I'm sure that's actually a location that I should remember. But the Saja Boys bring them to this, kind of big tower where they, kind of start to perform once again. And we see Guima is actually there in spirit. I guess he doesn't really have a physical form per se, or he does, but it's, not like, a body. But so we see Guima there. And I know Golden is a song that a lot of people like, but let me tell you, what it sounds like is awesome to me, right? So Rumi shows up, right? She starts singing, and she's just kind of pouring all of her emotions into the song, right? She talks about how she's had to hide herself, and this is not who she wants to be. She wants to be able to kind of admit herself to what she is, and she wants people to accept her for who she is. And we kind of slowly see the song reaches both Mira and Zoe, and they kind of realize, like, hey, we are not perfect people, right? We have these kind of these fears, and we have these concerns about our character. And we kind of see them start to sing, and we see that they kind of get this kind of, I guess, power boost, so to say, from the song. But man, like, to me, this was the song, right? I love seeing it, the visuals, and just kind of having all these characters come together. And I think come to that conclusion that it's okay not to be perfect, right? Like, it's okay to kind of be broken, but just because you're broke, it doesn't mean that you can't be successful and be what you want it to be. And I feel like, especially for, what this is, aimed at, kind of this, younger audience, I still think that this has a lot of power, even with adults, right, or people our age. So what do you think about the song? Did it strike as much of a chord with you as it did for me?
Well, I mean, for her, I mean, she's come to the realization that she has to learn how to accept herself, and I think the problem is that she's allowed herself to be influenced by Celine and everybody else. Where I think it's more of her just wanting to prove that I'm not who you think I am. Even though you see me as this, that's not who I am. And there's a part in the earlier scene where she's confronting Celine. I kind of get the feeling that she was like, I'm done with this. Like, fuck this whole task of fighting demons. I'm just gonna give in. But then she comes back and she's like, well, no, I'm actually not going to give in. I'm just going to, continue, with who I am, because this is who I am. Like, my choices define me, not my looks.
Yeah. I think she wanted it to be her way of doing things, right? She was tired of everyone dictating what she had to do. She wanted this opportunity, at least in my eyes. She wanted this opportunity to do something that she felt like was going to solve everything. I think that was, like I said, a very powerful song. I really like that one. It sticks out in my brain. But yeah, so we see Guima starts to attack Rumi as the other members of the Saja Boys, except for Junie, who doesn't do anything at this Jinu, doesn't do anything at this moment. But we see, kind of this altercation going on with everybody. And Guima starts to attack Rumi directly. And she's blocking up the sword, and something's gonna happen. And Jinu shows up, obviously, and I don't think that part was very surprising. But what was surprising to me was I was kind of surprised that they killed him off. I thought that there was gonna be some crazy Deus Ex Machina where it's like hey, I sacrificed my life and I got my humanity back, and they would fight together and all this stuff. But no, it really is him. He sacrifices himself and he gives her his soul, quote unquote. And it kind of gives both Rumi and the rest of the group enough strength to defeat Guima. And I have to admit, right, like, I've seen a lot of things out there. I was legitimately surprised that they killed off Genu. I thought that there was going to be some asshole that was going to bring it back, but it didn't happen. So what about you? Did that shock you at all, or did you kind of figure something like that was going to happen?
Well, I was a little bit surprised, but I'm glad they didn't bring it back because it kind of makes his sacrifice more impactful, right?
Very true.
Because at least that way it lets her, because I mentioned it already, by performing this one act of goodness, it shows and it proves to Rumi and to everybody that he isn't, he isn't, a demon at all. He's there, he's still a human. He just has to reach deep down and kind of grab it. It kind of parallels with what we see with Rumi's story anyway.
Yes.
I mean, so so in this particular case, it's one of those things where both of them realize at the end of the day that their choice is to find who they are, and they both chose good. And yeah, Genu may die, but he dies with with the understanding that I'm going, but I'm going as who I want to be, not who Guima or anyone else tells me I need to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, and I do give it credit, right, for being something aimed at a younger audience, right? I think this is something that, I mean, when I think back to the old Disney movies that we grew up with, we've seen like, Mufasa dying, right? We see these characters. So like these animated films that are kind of aimed at a younger audience, we've seen that, but I would say over the years, we've seen a lot less of them wanting to kind of deal with characters like that dying on screen, right? I feel like we've kind of seen it become a lot softer. And this was, I think, kind of a return to form, or a return to kind of some of these, older things that are not afraid to, not have that, perfectly glowy, happy feeling ending at the end. Now, like I said, the movie ends with Huntrix. They get together. They go to a bathhouse. Something that Rumi never wanted to go into because she, had all the demon marks, so she could never be kind of exposed like that. But they do kind of put a little bit of this, like, little bit of silver lining, or this little bit of hope, because you see, like, the little demon bird and the cat are still alive on this side of the world. So what does that mean? I don't know. Does that mean that, are the demons truly gone, or was that maybe not what the Golden Hamun was for? I don't know. I think they kind of opened it up to a sequel. I've seen like a lot of murmurs about sequels. I don't know what, if any, that's real or what's going to happen with that, but I certainly feel like they've kind of set themselves up for a possible sequel in the future. But yeah, that's how the movie ends. And, I think for me, we've seen a lot of these animated films have a ton of success. And I'm glad to see that, right? I think it's so important because I feel like we've seen so many movies nowadays where it's all just about the explosions. It's all about, all the special effects. It's all about this. It's all about that. And to me, this was a very down-to-earth movie, right? I say down-to-earth as we talk about a K-pop band killing demons. But it had a very wholesome story to it, right? Of, you are who you want to be. You shouldn't have other people kind of dictate everything that's happening in your life. And even if you have shortcomings, that doesn't mean that you have to shy away from them. You can embrace them, right? There's an opportunity for you to do more. And I really just like how the message was super wholesome throughout. And I really appreciate that. And like I said, the songs were on point. I love so many of these songs. I definitely, before we started filming this, I definitely listened to it right beforehand, right? Because I just was like, these songs absolutely are awesome. And it makes sense why they're so popular. And I think it's something where it's a movie that not only has a good message for a younger audience, I still think it has an impactful message for random people in their 30s talking about it, or people even older than that. So I really enjoyed it. So Luca, what are your final thoughts?
I mean, as someone who works with animation, I really enjoyed the visual effects. It's just so brilliantly executed, and I just think it's a wonderful way to take, something that is, widely used in the West, but still, blended with, the familiar anime aesthetics to kind of create something unique and, that's individualistic and yet familiar, because like I said, the animation, style is very similar to, to Into the Spider-Verse movies, and yet you in particularly as an anime fan, you recognize the certain quirks and qualities that make it, an anime movie, right? So I really do appreciate that. I think the story is on point. The music is phenomenal, and I mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. I really do appreciate the fact that they take their time to write legit songs. Like, these are not comedy bits or just 2 minute sound bites that you're going to forget. Like, these are songs that you can actually imagine being on an album and streaming somewhere or reaching at the top of the charts, really. And I gotta say, the voice acting is on point too. Like, I was just stunned by the way that the actors just performed, and a lot of these are actually South Korean actors as well. So the way they're able to just convey the way that their characters think and behave is phenomenal. So I really do appreciate all that coming together to create a really solid movie. And if they do make a sequel, I know I'm definitely going to watch, and I definitely know we'll do a review of that too. If and when it comes out.
We will. Yeah. So if I was to give this a final grade, right, I would probably give this, I gotta say, a 4.6. I really like this. You brought up tons of amazing points, Luca, about kind of the story and everything. And as I said, I'm not going to pretend like this is unique or something we've not seen done before, but it's executed at such a high level. The characters are just so unique with their style. Like, they have their in depth, right? These are not just like 2D characters, right? They have a whole lot to their personality. And it's something that they're able to do. The musical numbers are great. They help advance the story. They're not just there for no reason. I would say the only thing I kind of wish they did was, this was a film, right? Now, Luca, how long do you think this was?
It was about an hour and a half, because I started watching it at 5:30 and I was done by 7. So
it was very quick, right? It was, and I would say 90 minutes with all the credits in it, right? So it is a very short film, right? Which I get that, when you're dealing with a younger audience, attention spans are not always the strongest, right? But man, I would have loved to see them flesh out a little bit more, right, with some of the characters, right? Would have been interesting to see Celine, a little bit more of her backstory and understanding what's going on, or maybe even giving some of the Saja boys, because really we know Genu, but the other ones are kind of nameless. So, would that have been interesting to learn more about the characters? So I think that, like I said, there was, I think if it was a little bit longer, this is a universe I would love to see more of. Not necessarily that you would have to go into those directions, but it was something where we only had 90 minutes, and I wish they would have given us a little bit more. So,
you got to keep in mind too that with animation, it's far more labor intensive. So
very true.
So so it can take, and I'm just throwing out numbers here. It could take a week just to animate like maybe 15 minutes worth of material, just because you've got to go through so many motions and lip syncing and doing the action, and it's not very easy too. Believe me, I've tried on so many occasions. I'm still working on it too. So the hour and 30 minutes that you get, everything is precise, because everything that they put in the script and everything that they plan out is intentional. Because we do want to know more about Saja Boys. Maybe we want to get a little bit more backstory into what was going on in Genu's life, because what we see in Genu's life is very it's I wouldn't say it's entirely deceptive, but we don't really know the the whole truth really because yeah, he did it for himself, but we don't really know, like, did he try at all to try to save his family or anything like that? Because he said that his family was worse off once he went away, right? But but for the hour and 30 minutes that you have, just based on how limiting it is to to do animation, I think what we got was pretty well justified. So I would give it a 4.7 out of 5.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Like
it was
it,
really good.
like it. So
and I'm not just saying that because because I want to get more subs on the channel, which I definitely do, but I genuinely enjoy watching this movie. It's a keeper for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening to us on this. And I know we obviously won't be able to share any of the music during the review due to copyright reasons, but I would urge anybody that is hasn't maybe given it a chance yet, even though a lot of people have watched this already, but check out the music, right? Like, I think it's so powerful to listen to some of the songs that it is just impressive how they came together to do everything. So yeah, that's everything I got. So if you got anything else, Luka, if not, we'll see everyone in the next review.